Welcome back. Welcome back to the Detroit is Different podcast studios. And 'tis the season. It's fall. The leaves are covering and changing everything. But of it, it's a little bit of heat still lasting. Where Michigan stands, global warming, or who knows? This is just Michigan. And 'tis the season of so much to give and caring and being present and being in community. And I have somebody that actually was big in a lot of this inception of Detroit is Different. Somebody that has volunteered and soldiered in some Detroit is Different efforts back in the day. It is a back in the day of Detroit is Different. This is 10 years. And when you think of the 10 years, somebody that's always been present and a friend of the efforts, like for real, people say stuff, she delivers on what is said. Shalece Daniels, how are you today?
Hey, Khary, I'm good.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a minute.
It's been a little while. How are
Yeah.
you?
All is well. All is well. And you're working on a lot of things. Business,
Yep,
community works,
that's it.
family,
Always. Yeah.
and always creative.
Yep. Glad to be here. So happy to see you and the studio. And wow,
Mhm.
I love it.
Thank
Everything
you.
that has happened and that you said you were going to do it. You did it. You kept doing it and you have not gone anywhere. And I love that.
Definitely you so like the path in that connection early on with like an iteration of a studio.
Yeah.
You were the person that helped like get some connections going when we needed some internet, and then who knew that even from there it's like, okay, you do this, you do that, let's get creative, let's do some more works. And since then the connection has always been good money in my book. So if you're wondering what the colloquialism, a slang term of good money means, basically it's like, hey, if the call comes, it's golden stamp.
Cool.
So that's where it stands and that's where we stand. But before we even get into all of that, we got to get into the history. You and your peoples, Detroit, what's the relationship?
Correct.
How many generations deep are you to Detroit?
I think I'm back. My paternal grandmother migrated here on my paternal side, and then on my mother's side, yeah, my grandmother from Stone Mountain, Georgia.
Stone Mountain, Georgia.
That's it. My father's people are from Waynesboro, Mississippi.
Waynesboro, Mississippi.
Yep.
Okay, so let's go to Waynesboro, Mississippi. Whereabouts is that?
2 hours east of Jackson.
Okay. All right.
Mhm.
So that's closer to Georgia
It
as it
is.
would be said.
You
Okay.
got it.
All right. And then also you said the mountains of Georgia.
That's it, Stone Mountain. Well, I'm told that my mother's people are from Stone Mountain, Georgia.
Mhm.
Don't know where, how, when we migrated. I'm
Mhm.
very familiar with my father's story, but with my mom's,
Not as much.
No.
Okay. All right. So coming up this way, what neighborhood did they move to?
My mother moved to my mother's people
Mhm.
were in Black Bottom.
Okay.
Of course, right?
Okay.
My father's people, they were St. Clair and Verner.
Mm.
Yeah.
So not far,
No.
but not there, but close.
Nah.
All right. So your roots go back to like old Detroit. So you generations deep here.
Yeah, a few.
Okay. All right. So definitely thinking of that lens. And now I guess I would say like your grandparents, what neighborhoods do you remember them growing up in as a child, from your memory?
I remember being on St. Clair. As
Mm.
my maternal grandmother passed when I was just 6 months old,
Mm.
so I wasn't able to go to her house.
Mm.
I just remember them growing up in Black Bottom, my mom.
Mm.
My dad, though, I remember going over to, on St. Clair. My grandmother owned a two-family flat on St. Clair. Can't remember the address, but it was right off of Verner. We used to make ice cream, homemade ice cream. You know how you sit on the porch
Mhm.
and you churn, you keep dumping the salt,
Mhm.
the rock salt in, and you
Mm.
sit on the porch and you churn.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was a beautiful time. My grandfather used to take us fishing, 5 o'clock in the morning, probably earlier than that.
Where were y'all fishing?
I have no clue. I was a kid. But my granddad's name was JT.
Okay.
Loved to fish.
JT
Always
sounds like somebody
JT.
that can
That
fish.
was his name.
Okay.
JT.
Okay. All right. And I'm guessing what work? What did your grandparents do?
So my grandmother, she worked at a cleaners for a little while. My grandmother, this is a funny story. She was a household operator. HOOSEHOLE. Household operator.
What is that?
um, I used to think it was an elevator operator. It wasn't.
Mhm.
They managed. It said something about when I looked up household operator
Mhm.
recently. Business operations or something like that.
Hmm.
I don't know exactly what that meant in
Mhm.
terms of she worked at Cass Tech High School
Ah,
as a
okay.
household operator.
Hmm.
Never did she really talk about it.
Hmm.
I know when she was in Waynesboro, she was a teacher.
Hmm.
But when you come up south, right, your education is
Yeah.
not the same. So
Mhm.
even though she graduated from college, she was a teacher. She used to tell her students, "Did you clean your pocketbook?" for the
Hmm.
girls,
Hmm.
and that meant, "Did you
Yeah.
clean? Yeah, are you
Yeah.
clean?" Yeah, they could do stuff back then
Mhm.
like that. But when she came up here, I just assumed she was a teacher
Hmm.
because she always said, "I was a teacher. I was a teacher."
Mhm.
And, yeah, anyway, who's whole operator at Cass Tech, and I knew she wasn't a teacher at Cass Tech. Always I thought she was a teacher because I found her ID when she died.
Hmm. And that's interesting talking about just like how what would be honored, especially for the Black experience of like even having a college degree is
Yeah.
not necessarily seen across the board because it's like, what school did you go to and all of that. What college did she go to?
Don't know.
Okay.
I know she went to school, but I have no clue.
Okay. So, and then coming here, still connecting in education, but not being able to take on that role of what teacher would be. So clearly she was like, okay, this is where my passion is at. But
I think there had to be some shame there because
mm,
her sister, she migrated when they came up from Waynesboro. My aunt Ira, her younger sister, she stopped in Chicago.
mm,
And she did work in the school. They all went to
mm,
college.
mhm,
She worked at, I don't know what's the name of the school that she worked at in Chicago, but she was a librarian.
mm,
And then her daughter was a librarian, my cousin Gail.
mm,
Funniest story, there had to be some shame for my grandmother to
mm,
not be able to be a teacher. Her sister was in Chicago and she was
mm,
able to be a teacher.
mhm.
You know, had to be something there.
Yeah, definitely. We think of just those realities of the experience of being Black in America can present itself,
Yep.
especially when we look at over time. Like, some would say some opportunities that look different on that journey. So that's the work of your grandmother, your grandfather.
I don't know my grandfather.
You don't know your
So
grandfather's
JT,
story.
oh, hold
Yeah,
on. JT, the
mm,
grandfather that I knew
yeah,
that raised me,
mm,
he worked at the car plant, I
mm,
believe.
mm,
Now my grandparents were old.
mm,
They had my grandmother, I'm young, I'm 42,
mm,
and my grandmother was born in 1918.
mm,
So she had my dad when she was like 36 years old.
mm,
And my dad had me when he was 27 or something.
mm.
So I had older grandparents. They
Grandparents.
were retired by the time they were long retired.
What was that relationship as I had some retired grandparents too. What was that like? Because I'm guessing, were you the youngest grandchild?
Um, no, actually, my cousin, I have 2 cousins that are twins.
Mhm.
They're a little younger than me and they're about 35.
Okay.
So a lot younger, but they came
After
real
the
late.
fact, yeah.
Yeah, real
Mhm.
late.
Mhm.
I'll tell you, it was awesome. All she did was cook, preserve,
Mhm.
bake,
Okay.
all the things.
Mhm.
And I didn't find out when I said I didn't know my grandfather, I didn't find out until after she died that JT was not my grandfather.
Mm,
Isn't that something?
ain't that something?
That's the way that it goes. So,
Mhm.
yeah, but it was weird how as a kid, you're so stupid. my dad called him JT. Like, why do you not know?
Call him dad. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Mhm,
But, anyhow, it was a good relationship
mhm.
between my grandfather, my grandmother, and the way that they treated the grandkids. Like, we had so much fun. Wow, it was nothing like going over Granny's house. We called her Granny.
Okay. All right. And then with that, I do think that it provides a different experience having a retired grandparent. As you know, we're in my grandma's room right now that we've
Wow.
converted to a studio. So the retired grandparent experience is different than like the, I guess, what would you say, the older or younger grandkid? You know what I'm saying? Like, because we were some of the youngest grandkids for the longest as well. So because of that, I am the youngest grandkid actually on my maternal side. So it's
Yeah.
like a different experience where they're retired if they're that right age where they can still drive and they can do things. And it's like, yeah, go on, give me them babies. We gonna do some stuff. You know what I'm saying? Whereas different like with a working grandparent where it's like, hold on now.
Nah,
Hold
you
on
gotta
now.
check my schedule. You can't just be
Yeah.
dropping them kids off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So that's where you remember the grandparents. What about you? Where did you grow up?
I grew up, wow, on Rosemary and Dickerson
Mm,
on the east side of Detroit,
okay.
not far from Denby, I guess. I guess that was
Hmm.
the high school.
Okay. So that neighborhood, what do you remember about that neighborhood coming up?
It was fun, and
Mm,
as I remember it, it was fun. We had fun outside. We would, jump rope. We would have push-up contests. We would have, like, the f my brother and I would do frozen Kool-Aid in the styrofoam
oh,
cups, and
yeah,
we would
yeah.
we would sit outside at the driveway and charge 10 cents for people to buy them
There you go. That was
on
the Pee
hot
Wee
days.
Herman
Man,
the Pee Wee
seriously.
Herman, business
That's
enterprise.
it. It
Mhm.
was nice, but as I look back when I'm older, it was actually dangerous.
Mm.
But we
Mhm,
didn't know as kids, we were just
mhm,
innocent having fun.
mhm,
When I think about, like, there was a drive-by shooting where a guy named Jamal who lived right across the street from us was killed.
mm,
There was another drive-by shooting. There was a drug dealer, a big drug dealer that lived on the corner,
mhm,
and there was someone, his name was Doug, and he got, like, in with the drug dealer even though he was my brother's age,
mm,
who was, 3 years older than me at the time, and I remember there being some conversation in the neighborhood about, like, we gotta try to get Doug out of this or something
mm.
like that. It was yeah, it was but as kids, you don't know, you just live that life, and I'm glad that I had that innocence, that shield of being innocent, being shielded from all that stuff, and just being a weird ass little kid
Mm,
playing my violin, walking up and down the streets.
mm.
I look at that now like, how weird was that?
Hey, let's talk about the string instrument. What connected you to the violin at that age?
School. I went to Goodell Elementary School.
Mm,
And 3rd grade, I think, you started with an instrument, and I
mhm.
chose the violin.
What do you think it was about the violin that spoke to you?
I don't know.
Mm,
I'm not sure.
okay.
I can still play it to today.
Mm,
Probably only a few songs, like Mary Had a Little Lamb and some
mhm,
stuff like that, but I can still play a
mm.
little bit.
Interesting. All right, so that's there. Your parents, what were your parents doing?
My dad, he worked for the water company,
Okay.
Detroit Water and Sewerage Department, and my mother was a hairdresser.
Oh, okay. All
Yeah.
right. So styling was something that definitely you were able to connect with. And I often say this from the natural hair show. And people don't look at it like this sometimes because being a beautician or a barber, you are an artist for one,
Absolutely.
but you're also an entrepreneur. Like you are running your own business, even if you're paying booth rent, as they say. Like that's your own business. You're provided a space to do things, but it is a business where you're building your client base, customer retention, all of the arcs of any other business, and the number one thing, sales, really come into play.
My mother was definitely an entrepreneur. Um, she knew she made a lot of money back then. I can't give you a number, but I remember she would work really late and come home with wads of money, and this is
Mhm.
how I learned how to count. She would throw it on the bed and say, "Count it."
Mm,
And that's how I learned how to count lots of money, like, real quick because
Mhm.
it was so much money, but it also at that time went through her hands real fast. We all had Jordans and Nikes and,
Mhm.
the whatever we were wearing, the goose downs and all that stuff because, she wanted us to have what she didn't. In terms of being an entrepreneur, she had to manage that money because she
Mhm.
had to make it last, right? She had to buy school stuff and holiday things and pay all the bills, and she had to make sure her P&L was good, that she could still buy her supplies, pay her booth rent, and go to work every day and take care of us and so on. It was, 4 of us.
So just so the lens, so people kinda get it, P&L, profit and loss,
Yeah.
and definitely managing what that income would be. And oftentimes, sometimes we'll look at this as what you just kinda mentioned, like, street money is like move it comes fast and moves fast, but
Yes.
a lot of cash-based businesses, it's hard to sometimes internalize, like, how much this is because it moves so fast. And when I say it moves so fast, even for a barber or a beautician, if you're making on average, you say, "Oh, you know, last Friday I made about $4,000. The Friday before I made about $4,000. So I assume this Friday I make about $4,000." Like, this becomes the logic, which is not necessarily saying that that's not a way to think, but it becomes more of that hybrid model of, like, the planning looks more like the how a hustler sees the lens of how much can I make today versus maximizing, like, how do I build structures that can be in place and be business models I can keep pulling from in case that snowstorm happens, in case the power outage hits the
In case I
location,
have a baby.
in
In
case
case
I
I
have a
get
baby.
sick,
Yeah,
in
in
case
case
I
I
have to go to parent teacher conference. I mean, there
yes.
were so many things that
Mhm.
my mother missed. My mother had my sister. I was the 3rd,
Mm.
and my sister was the 4th.
Mhm.
She had a C-section, a cesarean section.
Mm.
She went back to work 2 weeks later, or we would have gotten our lights cut off
Mm.
because we didn't know at that time about planning, saving.
Mm.
I don't know that she necessarily trusted the bank. I don't know if that was remnants left over from her parents, but she had a lot of money under that mattress until she
Mm.
didn't,
Yeah.
until it ran out. But, yeah, it was interesting living in a house like that.
Yeah, and I would say that a lot of those cash-based businesses, even restaurants and bars, nightclub owners, and what those relationships would be with banks, and then you add the banking in the Black community, or really, Kari Frazier logic, y'all already know. All institutions of America, banks included, so meaning like the financial industry, have not been designed for our people. So building relationships has been a journey since Reconstruction, what that looks like. And and then having access to what that would become. But even just starting with that bank account, as I have that discussion with a lot of the teams and contractors I work with now, you know what I'm saying? I'm
Yeah.
like, "Hey, I wanna work this direct deposit." And they're like, "I ain't got a bank account." So it's like, "All right,
You on
well,
Cash App me?
there you go." You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
Oh,
So,
yeah.
like, so in this arc of this, seeing the cash, so you recognizing that, and then also seeing the hustle,
Yeah.
the timing of how your mom's working at, this is hitting you differently because you as a business person have been one of the most on point people I know when it comes to planning things, seeing through things, and putting those structures in order.
Thank you. Um, I've always been a little different
Mhm.
from, I would see I would even kinda judge my mom in ways like, "Why are you buying new gym shoes again? Like, we're good. We should put
Mhm.
some money up." I do not know where I got that from, but when I got older, I saved much more than I spent. I shopped at the secondhand stores, and I couldn't understand why my mom spent all of her money, but it was because that's all she knew how to do.
Mhm.
So let me take it back. At the time, much, much different now, but at the time, that's what she knew. Howard Gardner, the story that, Pursuit of Happiness that Will Smith did, it was about the gentleman Howard Gardner who went into the neighborhoods and he started investing for teachers
Mhm.
in the neighborhoods because that was a lost, no one it was an overlooked industry that
Mhm.
those people needed their funds invested as well, so he became an institutional investor for the everyday teacher, right? We have so much wealth in the Black neighborhood, in the hairdressers and the barber shops, that if we had another Howard Gardner that went and they helped them with those financial literacy, the, um, the sex worker industry or the bars and the restaurants and so on, these cash businesses, if we had a Howard Gardner, um, adjacent person that would do that, we could really build some wealth, Kari, because we make a lot of money.
I would I would say definitely I agree. And this kind of goes into one of the interviews that I'm playing some clips now on LinkedIn. Shout out to Crystal Gunn and a lot of the work that Crystal does into this. In that thought process, like I say, the mentality of how I describe how I think hustlers think and how a business person thinks. And that hustle is definitely like, I want to maximize the return on whatever it is as fast as I possibly can, because the hustler mentality, and I know a lot of people that wake up like this, so where they have a mark of this is how much money I want to make today. Like that's thinking how a lot of the hustlers I think
Yeah.
think. Whereas a business person is like, I'm going to make this investment now, and it's going to plant a seed that possibly may take years to develop, but in those years as it developed, I'm gonna be able to pull more resources out of it, and that's going to be solid. So it's the patience of it. And
I
sometimes
ain't got no patience. What are we talking about?
yeah, and all of this kinda goes is like what Crystal was saying, just due to, like, our journey here as a people and a lot of other things, just definitely with family and what people know, because there are some people that have, definitely, sold dreams to folks about that. It just doesn't feel as real, where it's like, "Okay, I know these Jordans, or I know these Gators, or I know this vacation, or I know this new laptop, or I know this new TV, or I know this new car." That's something tangible. I can touch it, I can feel it,
Right
and then I can
now.
get the feeling of my work, and
Yeah.
hence, uh uh uh, hence looking at the material assets and the goods qualifying the worth of the work that you put in.
So, I mean, I talk about it all the time with dopamine hits. And we do it on our phones.
Mhm,
We also do it on our backs with the cars that we drive, the vacations, the way that we're able to floss on social media and things like that.
mhm.
Um, we have to change the perspective of what gives us that feeling. I do think that feeling is important, but what if you could look at your investment portfolio, right? With Vanguard or Schwab or whomever, and you see it slowly growing, and you switch your perspective to make that give you the dopamine hit as opposed to the sweet ass J's that you got on today. Or you got room for both, right? It doesn't have to be a either or, because I'm gonna buy some sweet ass J's and then I'm gonna put this other half of this 500 that I just made right here and tuck it away.
I was gonna ask, first off, you presented something that we went into the psychology of it. Can you explain what that feeling of the dopamine is?
So from my understanding, the way that I do it as a business coach is it's the feel good drug,
Mhm,
right? Some people use drugs, some people gamble, some people tick off like task list. That's me.
mhm.
You tick off the task list and you feel good because you feel accomplished, right? It's a drug that our body naturally makes. It's important to have the dopamine. It keeps you motivated. When you don't have it, sometimes you can suffer from depression, right? Um, we get it in different ways. And I think all of them are valid ways. We just have to have a balanced stratification, right, across all these different lines. Um, when we're not educated, though, meaning nobody ever told me about this or that thing, we're unable to even have that as an option in our lives. And let's say you are told about it, but your mind is not ready to or open to receive it. We have to have someone that we have rapport with, that we credibility, that got a little street cred that we can understand to come into our lives and be able to really break it down or demonstrate without even saying like, well, this now is the cool thing to do.
I love what you presented because it's so much of the relationship and that connection. Hence, here, creativity, culture, community. That's the arc of where the roots stand. With Detroit is different, and so much of the path that I've chosen is not necessarily what I think a lot of people look at as the usual arc of success. But clearly, a lot kind of goes into the path that I've chosen,
Absolutely.
and that's really where that messaging lies. And I do believe that there is a more generalized understanding of what success looks like, especially when I talk to like some of the little homies, some of the younger
Yeah.
people about like, okay, this is what success is, this is how success looks, as opposed to I believe that success is based on quality of life. So having access to those resources to make those decisions, to have opportunities to heighten the quality of life for you and the people in your circle, whether that be your family, your friends, the other people you work with, that is beautiful if you can have that. And so much of reaching that, I believe, is spent in having the discernment of time to make those decisions. And that right there, as you talk about like, listening to people, sometimes it's listening to yourself. It's stepping back and really reflecting.
Mm.
And I do believe that even me included, like, do I really step back and reflect? This is one of those times is business slows down a little bit now, so I
Mhm.
can reflect a little bit. I can work a little bit more. You can fall in different zones. Some people gonna party, and nothing's wrong with partying either.
At all.
But that reflection, that knowing that everything you don't have to just be on the go all the time. Nothing always is in action. You can step back, you can reflect on what the next move is to make and look at this more like a chessboard instead of a checkerboard. But even that alone, when I've talked to certain people, it's like, I ain't got time
I
for time.
wonder though, think about I ain't got time for time.
I know that's
Think
hilarious.
about where that comes from. Like, I know when I was unable to slow down, it's so funny that we're talking about I am a rest coach, so to speak. Like, that is
Mhm,
what my business philosophy is. When I was unable to slow down, it was because there was something else that was hurting under there.
mm.
Like some shit that I can I cuss?
Yeah, you can.
Okay, that's like that's probably my first language for real.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
There we go.
there was some shit that I did not wanna pay attention to.
Mm,
Like, there was some deep shit that
mm.
I didn't wanna dig up. But if I slowed down and I was quiet and I reflected and I was by myself, that shit was right there in my face.
I think that that's for many people because that reflection time actually does have you say, 1 second, I probably don't need to look at, even though I like this person that's looking to sell me a house. And I know they're saying all I got to do is come up with $1,000,
Yeah,
but I'm barely making rent.
yeah,
And my rent is $600. And as much as I do want to get to a point where I own a home, if I'm barely making my rent for 600 a month, I don't necessarily think that putting in a down payment with this $1,000 is something that's a smart thing to do. And also just, the other enclaves of that, like, oh man, you a hater if you presenting that and all of that. Hence that time to listen to yourself
yeah.
and bring in the other forms of counsel. But most of that running, as you say, the busyness is because if you do sit in that time, whatever it is you're running from,
Yep.
it's gonna be like
It's
right
ready.
it's
Oh,
gonna be
it's
like
ready.
right in your face, like, "Oh, that's what I'm running from. I'm running from."
I mean, I'm not a psychologist, but I would even say, like, that busyness shit is even a form of depression.
Mm,
Like, that busy, I cannot stop. I cannot stop. Even more so, like, you know how sometimes we talk about that hustle mentality, and I wake up and I be like, "I gotta make this much money today."
yes.
That busyness is because you feel like if you stop, everything is gonna fucking
Everything's
fall
gonna
apart.
it's a house of cards. And
Yeah.
I would be lying if I told you that that's not a feeling that I felt. And as I've grown older, I've starting to reflect in the whole motto of, as I say, I build and I destroy. I sometimes go through the mental exercises. If both houses burn down, where do I
Yeah.
start? Where am I
Yeah.
at? What am I reflecting on? Because like, what is the true value of this? Is it the cameras? Is it my relationships?
Wow.
It's really where I've coming from with the heart. And sometimes just knowing how to move in those pivots. And that to me is where, not to sound too much like a very optimistic novel here, but that's where your character shows. I believe your
Yeah.
character comes to light in those times when things do not go as planned. When the people you were planning and relying upon, for whatever reason, it doesn't work out. It's like, am I going to be able to take responsibility and accountability for everything in my
Yeah.
life, even when that happens, and move forward and say, okay, this happens, that happens. How do I move forward? Give myself a time to like, man, didn't expect that. But then I have to like get back into like, let me reflect. What are those options? Hence the other motto that I say, like I often see life as an equation and it's a balance. It's always up and down. And opportunity, hence I really believe in this this economic concept of
Mhm.
opportunity costs, meaning that when one door shuts, another one opens. It's just, are you willing to look at those other options, or were you just so married to this being what needs to happen?
We don't know shit. Like, rejection is my protection, and I
Mm,
still get caught up sometimes like, "Shit, but I wanted to go," and then I'd be like, "Wait a minute, no, no, nope, 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 there's something better.
mhm.
Relax."
Yeah.
But it took me a while to get there. It doesn't matter what it was, but I know I always tell myself, like, "That shit wasn't for me.
Mm,
Rejection is my protection." Like, how many times has something not worked out? Call it a loved one, a job, an interview, a whatever, a pair of
mhm.
shoes, right? And the alternative turned out to be much better.
And sometimes I would say it may take a while for the alternative, but I believe the lesson, hence the L. When I say taking an L, I'm getting a lesson. Every business lesson that I've learned has come from, at the time, and this is still arbitrary based on, but at the time, whenever I was losing a lot of money, learned a
Yeah.
lot of business lessons losing money. Not saying that like making money, I'm not learning something, but it's like making money is like, oh, okay, the process is going like it needs to go. Losing money, it's like, okay, let me really reflect on
I'm not to let
what
this
went left here. And am I going to look at blaming everybody but me, or am I going to take as much accountability as possible? No, I need to take as much accountability as possible. So now I've learned. So like when people look at me do budgets and they say, when I usually do a budget, this is what I do. I do the budget and then I multiply the budget times 1.33, meaning I
Mhm.
multiply it times one more third. And they say, why do you do that? And it's like, because
Mhm.
I know that whatever I've budgeted, it's going to cost me at least 33 to possibly 45% more money. And it's like, how do you know that? And it's like, because I've been doing this long enough to know that that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So if I stick to the plan, I don't care how much I stick to the plan, it's gonna cost some more money.
Yeah.
Now, if it doesn't, great.
Great.
But usually it does. So people are like, man, how did you? And it's like, yeah, I knew.
I've been in this. I've been in this.
And those L's and those lessons, that's the game being given. And that's the journey. And also in that journey comes the relationships, because some of those relationships aren't, as I say, like the friendship. So now you got me on my soapbox talking. Like during my rap days, I never was one to cheat, and I'm not trying to sound square or anything. I don't have anything against smoking marijuana per
Right.
se, but that just never really was my thing. And during that time, obviously, just rap and marijuana are like hand in hand. Most people are like start rapping because they like smoking weed, but that wasn't me. And there would be times where a lot of the people that were rapping with me at that same pace would get access to, like, okay, Eminem's crew is in, like, D12 is in there.
Yeah.
Okay, how do you get next to D12? You got some good weed, you got access to possibly, whoever the biggest rapper is in the world that night. But the way they knew you in relationship was the person with the weed. They never knew you as a person necessarily to do business with. And I'm not saying necessarily a person with good weed doesn't become a business person, but it's a different type of relationship that is built. And what I've seen over time is the best relationships are actually seen over time where people see like, okay, I've seen this person stay. They've lasted. They took some hits that I didn't think a person
Yeah.
could take and last, and they've been here. I've seen this person do this for years. Hence, they've been through the up, they've been through the down. They had the special business funding when Mayor Kilpatrick was in office, and then when
It's
things
special business fund.
when that funding dried up, they still stayed in business and they was complaining a little bit, but they figured out how to operate and change their business model, got a little bit of something else, but nah, then they expanded and went down to Atlanta and did this and did that. Like, that's where it's like, okay, whether I know you or don't know you, your reputation is built from the resilience and the character that you still show to delivering what that product is. Hence, people look at you and say, okay, I can do stuff with you. And hence, it's not even about like and dislike, because they may like another person,
Yeah.
but your reputation precedes itself. So hence, that's built on the character and the commitment. You know, that those days when I look at oftentimes when people see me at events, it's like, why you don't ever eat at events? Because it's like, if I got a crew of 10 people, my whole crew got to eat.
Yeah.
And then technically, depending upon what the event is, you know, we're obviously would eat last. So by the time the meal is kind of finishing up, they probably want us back on cameras and audio and stuff. So if they got chicken wings on their hand and slipping or something, I'm not necessarily saying that a client would think to themselves like, damn, that's a bad shot right when we gave these awards right after dinner, because I think that they guy was eating chicken. But if it's in the back of my mind, I don't want it in the back of their mind. So I'm like, okay, if y'all want to eat, I'll feed y'all before or I'll feed y'all after. What do y'all want? It's like, I got to think like that. But I'm not going to eat because I want to make sure that this job gets done.
So does that mean that at the collard green cookout, I can't be on your crew because I'ma eat. I'ma be the first person in line. Like, these not good. She put
Hilarious.
mustards in these.
So it's so funny you mention that, because at the Natural Hair Show this year at the International Food Tasting, we had chefs from the Collard Green Cook-Off that said, "Man, this is the first time I seen Khary eat something at an event," because it was things was at where I could get. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna try this. You know,
I would have been fired. Is what you're saying.
So what I'm saying is, I have to know that this is the mark of like what I've seen in good leadership of where things are. You know what I'm saying? So I definitely welcome everybody working with me to partake in what that is. You would have a task where that would be, and those people then in the other task would know. Hence, that's relied, and that's also the learning curve. I'm in the learning curve of how do I pour into others where things can expand, because it gets to a certain point where you can only have so much capacity.
Yeah. So make sure Shalese's hungry ass is on a task.
You got it.
Near them collard greens.
You would. I would put you on. I would already tell you. You would be in voting tabulation.
Yes,
you would be in the vote tabulation, which is
the best freaking voting tabulator.
Oh, that gets contested. But yes, you would be in the voting tabulation crew, and that way you can eat. You know what I'm saying? It's like you have to try everybody else. They gonna be like, yeah, she was over there by them the whole time. But that's where you would be. You would definitely be in a position where that would be something that you could experience. And that's really the other form that is learned, because some of this is when you don't know, speaking up about what it is, having that courage to speak.
But having a leader that recognizes, you know what I mean? I'm joking saying Shalece is hungry ass, but seriously, being able to meet your people where they are and take care of them in every way. It's not just about money. I'm sure you know that. It's rarely about money. You can get people to do a lot of shit if you know what their language is, like what they need, what their motivating factor is.
And the opportunities, because you're right. It's going to hit a clip, and I've seen it, especially like working with so many young people over time, that it gets to a point where that creativity gets going, where it's like, I can do this. You know, and it's a beautiful thing to see, actually. You know, sometimes it's like, man, I want them to stay longer. So like you give them a little bit of opportunity, and it's like, wow, I didn't know I could do that. Then They get a little bit more. Okay, let's do this. And then they tell you how everything's gonna be. And it's like,
Listen,
okay, that's dope.
I'm
And then
about
they
to
like,
lose somebody right
and
now.
then they be like, hey, I got a
Out.
dip. And it's like,
Yep.
you know what? That's wonderful. But that's part of learning the arc.
So wait, Khary, here's what I do. When I start to see that, I bring somebody else in and be like, "Look, I need you to make sure that they know how to do everything
Mm,
that you do." And like I already have these whatever videos for
systems.
them to go by, right? So they're going by these videos that this person is doing, but we have a real serious conversation. So I said, speaking of, I sat down with my property manager today
Mhm.
and I'm probably gonna cry. She told me she's
Mhm.
moving to North Carolina,
Mm,
like, today. She's
mm.
moving in February, February 1st,
Wow.
and, I was hurt.
Mm.
I was like she took me to Panera Bread. I was like, "You brought me to this public ass place because you ain't want me to do
Hilarious.
the ugly cry. What you
Hilarious.
mean you leaving?"
Mhm.
And I have to say, like, she's probably the one that I didn't see. Like, I knew that she's great. She does
Yeah.
all these things, but god dang it.
It's
Like,
it's
ah.
it but this becomes the arc of, to me, how those relationships spawn out even further, because the other arc that's happened is some of those people that, Detroit is different, 10 years old now. So some of those people I've given those opportunities in, 2016, 2017 have called like, "Hey, I may have something for you." And it's like,
Yes, what
"Wow,
you
ain't that
need?
something?"
What do
The
you
the
need?
the crew, it has
Yes.
turned back around and said, "Yo, hey,
What you
what you looking
need.
for, my homie?"
Yes,
And it's like, "Ain't
yes.
this something?" But that goes also back to character and how I'm interacting with people in those opportunities
Yeah.
as it starts. So you coaching in a lot of these discussions, I'm sure, in coaching, because oftentimes the ego, especially with men, is I know everything and I don't want to show any vulnerability. As much as business is full of some of the most dynamic, especially black women I know, the arc in the institution has so much more of a masculine tone,
Oh,
of
ugh.
ego, and I know everything, and I don't want to show any vulnerabilities, because if I show any vulnerabilities, it's going to be a weakness and I'll lose
I
opportunities.
wanna ask a question, but I'm wondering how much time we have because
Let's go.
okay. Um, why do you think so I don't coach a lot of men for that reason,
Mhm.
because I'm not sure how much will get done or how long it would take me to make them feel safe enough to be vulnerable with me
Mhm.
so we can get to the nitty-gritty and get some shit done. A woman, in my experience, will come in like, "My kid, this, my husband, that, this is what's going on." I'm like, "Cool, let's get that shit out the way. Now, press 1, press 2, press 3. This what you gonna do with Stacy. You gonna tell her to do this. Break. See you next week. Come back." She's taking care of personal shit. She got her business shit together. And I'm like, cool. With the man, and I don't know this for sure. That's why I'm asking. I'm curious and so happy you brought that up. What why is it so difficult for y'all to be vulnerable even when like on the other side of this vulnerability,
Mhm.
Imma be able to get my shit together?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, clearly, it's like, it's the it's the idea of so much that we've been socialized with. So everyone knows my degrees are in marketing, but it's really the study of sociology. So when I speak of sociology or anthropology, kind of, 1A and sociology or part of anthropology,
Right,
I'm speaking of generalizations. So this is not as specific to your Uncle Andre.
right.
It's
Not
completely
like that,
different. I'm
nothing like what
speaking
you said.
in
Yeah.
generalizations. And in generalizations, the way we're socialized as men is that weakness and that vulnerability is something that society's just not going to honor. Um, hence the emotions
Yeah,
of where things go. Like often, like, ask a man how you feel.
right.
He's probably gonna say good, but then if like you like really sit down You look a man in the eye and you say, "Nah, brother, how do you feel?"
Yeah.
You may have a man break down and start crying, and it's like, "Damn, nobody really ever asked me how I feel." You know what I'm saying? Because we're usually approaching the world as what we do, being our value being what we do, our productivity. What can we produce? What that's connected
Yep.
to. So to unpack and get to a vulnerable space, our vulnerability is going to basically make up who we identify our identity with, meaning our identity is based on what we can produce, uh, our productivity. So now to really get into like a business coach, we're
Yeah.
getting into a space of saying like, damn, she's going to see me in a space where these are the deeper questions of my existence.
It feels that way, right?
That's yeah, and I'm just speaking
Feels that
all
way.
from the emotional realm,
Right.
not
Right,
necessarily
right,
from the
right.
actual realm. For everybody that, knows my age, I'm 41, about to be 42, but so I grew up big time watching wrestling and in marketing, just so many things in wrestling just stand out in my mind of how to reach people and audiences and things and just fan of it. So watching the Netflix documentary of Vince McMahon was just so powerful because let alone definitely a lot of what he's being accused of, some of the most horrific things, but to just sit and look at those interviews beforehand. And a lot of those interviews took place like maybe 2, 3 weeks before a lot of those accusations come out. And just the way he postures and presents, knowing so much is weighing on him, but just none of that vulnerability can be released. In so many things between the relationship with his father, a lot of the other men, and all that machismo. I mean, you think about all the testosterone of like professional wrestling. You know what I'm saying? It's a it's just that space that I think that for us, our identity is so aligned in that emotionally to release that.
Mm.
Where do you even have that guide to help you get back home if that becomes healthy in that space? Where do you get that balance?
I wonder, men probably need it a lot more than
Mhm.
women.
Mhm.
That's that space, that safety.
Yeah.
Because I talked to my husband about it. Like, I can cry. Like, I can cry right now, and you probably will be like, "Oh, get her some tissues."
Mhm.
Yet if you start crying, little fellas over there probably be like, "Damn, what's"
Yeah, what's up with Cuz?
right?
I agree. That's exactly
Right.
that that's probably
You
yeah.
know, um, but y'all definitely need space, like, for that, and I'm here for it.
Mhm.
I'm a little bit I think, I'm like, I don't know if I'm the right person because it might exhaust me just getting you to that point. Like, how do men get to the point when you need it? Men need that space to be vulnerable, even if it's not with a therapist, right? Because
Mhm.
we're just on a therapy. We just allowing men to get therapy, right?
Mhm.
This is new. But then you talk about business coaching, you bring your finances in.
I would say that in some spaces, the the business coaching, especially for a man that's in that space of business or of me, like if you're impacting many people's lives, I would argue that it may be more important than the therapy itself. Like if we really unpacking it, because it's a lot. You know what I'm saying? Like think about that person managing an operation that has that relationship with the owner and knows that like, damn, Christmas is coming up, and right at the top of January, we about to lay off half these people.
Yes.
Like what that weighs down, and how you just like hence this becomes more stoic. It becomes more direct in communication in those layers of like where that stands. Hence the whole concept of like how do you move? Like, do you want to move with fear or do you want to move with love?
Wow.
And it's like, okay, with fear, oftentimes, like when we get into the arc of masculinity.
Mhm.
So I'm just speaking from the arc of generalization. The thought process is with fear, they ain't gonna try me.
Yeah.
With love, I'll get tried all the time.
Wow.
So these concepts, the 48 laws of power,
Yeah. Yeah.
and how men was lean into that. Sun Tzu, the art of war. Like these are premises that manifest in our society. I'm not saying it's right or it's wrong, but because our society, especially from the lens of business, is so masculine. Hence, even the same lens of like when we look at like a lot of the titans that are women in business, they'll say like, man, she's tough. She
Yeah.
seems bitchy. She seems, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
because it's like that how do you develop that voice where you don't feel like, for lack of a better term, feeling like a sucker?
Yeah.
And even with me, what I've learned over time, and I believe that it's like many lessons. Sometimes getting played is just a part of the arc of life.
It is.
But carrying that with you where you feel like a sucker, and I can't believe this person tried me, that arc can weigh
Oh, yeah.
on a lot of men, because it's like, I don't want none of these people to try me. Hence, to open up for that vulnerability, you feel as though
Yeah.
like then that person can try me. You know what I'm saying? So now
Yes.
you my business coach, right?
Right.
And that's cool. And then I see you at, I don't know, I see you at the auto show preview talking
Yeah.
to one of my potential clients. And
Yeah.
then the deal didn't go through. As a man, I'm immediately thinking like, damn, I wonder did she let him know that, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yes.
yeah, she
Yes.
probably said, "Hey, you
Yes.
doing business with him? He was
Right.
crying the other day."
Right.
Or maybe she said that to her husband, and her husband knows my
Said
man
something.
too. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So it's
Yeah.
like, so now I have to like,
Yes.
posture or
Posture, all
whatever
the
this is gonna become, instead of just looking at it like, you know what? Let me bounce back, let me reflect, let me see where the other opportunities lie. That's just, I don't think that's the design of it.
wow.
Sometimes I go into deals saying, Mm, this is gonna be window dressing. I'm gonna learn the lesson.
Yeah.
And Lord knows the chip on my shoulder of like, I don't see this happening, or like just the phone call, you get the gut feeling like, nah, this ain't gonna be a money move, but
Yeah.
I'm still gonna walk through this and all of that stuff. Like all of these ideas start becoming more pressing, I believe, through that arc of masculinity, because we're still that boy playing
Mm.
outside with his friends, and you still feel more like all my friends looking
Yep. At
is
me.
more important than whatever this exchange that I'm having with, I don't know, somebody that stepped on my shoe.
I was Thank you for that. I think I understand differently
Mhm.
from that explanation. I came from a very masculine place, sales,
Mhm.
right? And then went in straight into business and needing to get things done in Detroit with contractors.
Mhm.
You just talked about it. Like, was not easy. I was very masculine in my approach.
Mhm.
Like, that shit ain't right. Get this shit done because you're not about to play with me.
Mhm.
When I brought in my feminine side, and what I mean by that is not, I wasn't all smiley and like, could you please?
Mhm.
Not that. But what I mean is, instead of a demanding way, it's like, okay, it didn't work out. How can we get this together? Like just changing the formation of the question, the same question, like, "That is not good enough. You need to redo this." "Okay. You know what? You spent a lot of time on this. How can we make this so that it's acceptable for the family that has to move in here? Or how can we come to some type of mutual understanding so that we're both satisfied? Because this is where we at now. We not back there, "I don't give a shit about what you promised me a long time ago." Like, I used to say stuff like, "You told me it will be done by January 1," you know? I'd be like, "Okay, January 1 is done. How do we move forward?" And
Mhm.
I feel like that's when I embraced my femininity, like, not being afraid of being ran over or stomped on, and it did happen. Like, I hired this one lady who I try to create an environment that I wanted when I was in corporate.
Mhm.
So in my organization, like, we just came back from Costa Rica with the people that work with us, that we pay for the trip. Like, we also give money for you to go on a trip. Like, there's no you don't it's unlimited time off, sick days, all that. Just let us know. Like, hey, I have never been taken advantage of with that. Never, not one, except one.
Mhm.
One lady who she worked 4 months. That was it. So it was quick, but I was hurt because she was an older lady. I've always had really good relationships with women
Mhm.
because I had strong women around me, my mother, my aunt, my
Mhm.
grandmother. Um, and I felt, like, personally attacked
Yeah.
when she wasn't personally attacking me. She was just living out her life story.
Yeah. And that right there, what you said can be some of the toughest ways of looking at things to know not to take it so personal. To know that, this is just part of the art.
Mhm.
And hence one of the things that I'm gonna do soon is I haven't even spoken to this on air, but I'm gonna start a new show where I really just break
Yes.
down a whole lot of the stories of the community organizers. So when people say I'm often smiling, I'm usually laughing at stuff. And the stuff I'm laughing at is me. So some of it is these lessons from relationships of what you learn, the L's that I've taken, because I think that is some of the most interesting dynamic things that I've ever seen, you know what I'm saying? Where it's like, wow, this is just so interesting what's come about and how these things have come about and what the plan was on paper versus how it really manifests and interacting in our community with all of the flavor, all the character, all of the personality that black folks bring. Like, it's so interesting, just the tangent sometimes, you'll be in a business
Mm.
meeting and then that business meeting will become a 15-minute conversation about where people used to buy gators the best. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, okay, how do you, like, and that's the stuff that used to be like, man, can we focus on what we focus on? And then it's like,
Mhm.
okay, nah, this is my people.
Let it
Let's
go there.
function, let's function in this space of the
How
two-tone
you
gators. You know what I'm saying? All right, we were talking about business planning for the future, but y'all
But
want to
this
talk about gators. So how do we function? And these are the lessons to learn because it's like this is going to present itself again.
Yep.
Where do we one of the terms I usually use is command a certain amount of respect. How do you command that? Because some of those same tangents brought up in those meetings, I believe, are similar to like what you said of the busyness that exists
Mm.
in a person's mind. Because it's like, okay, if this becomes very productive, then I'm going to end up if this becomes very productive and I'm not necessarily so committed to this, then this could possibly expose some of my flaws and my skills and
Mm.
my talents. So how do you still bring in the productivity from that person as well? Like, here's the classic thing. I always shout out to Suzanne, my project manager. So like, you present ideas of like, hey, all right, so what ideas do you think for the collard green cook off this year? And people be like, oh, you need to get some celebrities. My cousin knows Beyonce's driver that she gets every time she goes to Seattle. I know you don't think she go to Seattle all the time, but Beyonce be in Seattle all the time. It's this jewelry store that do everything, and my cousin's driver is the person that we can connect, and we probably get Beyonce on that. So, before it'd be like, what are you talking about? This don't make no sense. Why are we focusing on that? Hence, now it's like, okay, all right, special project.
Right.
Beyonce coming with the Seattle driver. And then you offer that to a group, you build a committee, you give the structure and the report and know that it's not going to always fall in that line
Right.
either, but you still pour life into like, okay, how did the productivity look? And sometimes, let me be honest with you, black people are dynamic sometimes when black people come together. The stuff you don't think's going to happen, you look up and you be like, damn, Beyonce here. One second.
Yes, yes. So, here is what I have suggested, and here's what I've done. I went
Mhm.
to a conference about a year ago today, about a year ago in January,
Yep.
and, my suggestion was create space for the brainstorming without judgment
Yeah.
in the beginning of the meeting because it gets their creative juices going. and you come up with Beyonce and her driver driving all the way from Seattle, I kid you not. Well,
Yeah.
like, one of the activities that I use at the beginning of some of my meetings, especially if I'm doing like a big team building meeting where we gotta do some strategic shit, where we gotta really think deep,
Mhm.
is I have this paper clip. You got 60 seconds to come up with how many uses for a paper clip. You can use paper clip, you can use something that you see in the room. You'll be shocked at how fucking creative
Mhm.
we are, from paperweight to, like, fix your glasses to hair clip to
Mhm.
whatever. They'll have a list of fucking 30 things that they've
Yeah.
come up with, and what that does is it taps into a certain part of your brain.
Mhm.
So these gators that they, how to identify the best gators, or Beyonce's
Mhm.
driver in Seattle, because she goes to Seattle all the time.
Yeah.
Like those things, there's a place for them. But if you keep them in that container,
Yeah.
like on the agenda, like this is, we about to do creative, throw that shit on the wall. I don't care if you say
Mhm.
orange paint. Whatever the thing is, it actually makes them do business better in the
Mhm.
next 45 minutes of the
I
meeting.
I definitely agree with that same space. Hence, I've learned it's like, okay, come with your creativity. And it's tougher because oftentimes people are not even given that space and
Yeah,
bandwidth to be creative. They're like, for
yeah.
real? I can give my idea. And it's like, yeah, you can give your idea, man. Come on. Let's get creative, man. It's called creative differences, but that arc is part of some of the lessons I plan on sharing. It sounds like you got some of the same game you've learned, and we're now just talking so much shop. Your business coaching.
Yes, I am a business coach now.
Mm.
Khary, it's been a long time since we talked,
Mhm.
and I went to, like, I was struggling with a little bit of mental health,
Mm.
some mental health issues in 2020,
Mm.
COVID,
Yeah.
and, I scheduled a 3-week vacation in Costa Rica, and I stayed for an additional week. I drove to the Caribbean side and stayed for an additional week. I flew home on January 6th of 2021,
Mhm.
and that's when they were scaling the Capitol building in Washington, DC. I
Mhm.
went back to I unpacked everything, washed it, packed everything back up, scheduled a ticket, and by January 8th, I was back in Costa Rica.
Mhm.
And I said, for 30 days of it at a time, I will make decisions on my life. That's how impactful it was when I took that 3-week break.
Okay, so you said for 30 days at a time.
I will
Unpack
make
that a little bit.
decisions. Um, I was at a beach with a girl that is now one of my very good friends. And, I was like, "Damn, I love it here. I wish I didn't have to go home." She said, "You don't." I said, Actually, I don't. I do." She was like, "Why?" I was like, "Because, I said I was coming for a week. I just can't do that." She said, "Well, how can you do it?" Younger than me, about 7 years younger than me. I was like, she was like, "Can you make decisions 6 months at a time?" I was like, "No, I can't make like this. Can you make them a week at a time?" I was like, "Yeah, I could stay for a week." "Can you make them 30 days at a time?" I said, "Yeah, I probably could. I probably could make decisions on my life for 30 days at a time."
Mm.
And those 30 days turned into 5 sets of 30 days. And I stayed from January 8th to the end of May.
Mm.
And then I came home, and then I, lived in both places
Mm.
because, as you may know, I don't know, I go back and forth to Costa Rica, so I'm part-time there and part-time here.
Mm.
But that was the most freeing thing for me and for my business, because I said, "They can have this shit.
Mhm.
I'm done."
Mhm.
Because if I didn't, had I not taken a break, had I not stepped back from the business at the time, I would have destroyed it.
Mm.
So I left.
Mm.
And, 30 days at a time, I kept signing that lease and finding somewhere else to live at a house, and I would be like, "Yep, I'm staying in February. Yeah, Imma be here for March. Probably gonna stay April."
Mhm.
Came back because my nephew went to the, Air Force, and we gave him a going away party. That's the only reason why I came back, but, I came back a different, with a renewed sense of being.
It's interesting you share that, and especially for people that work and build and develop. so much into business. And oftentimes when people say, "Man, you spend so much time on your business too," but it's like, if people knew, like, I love this stuff so much, and it doesn't necessarily mean rest, but, like, even in my rest, I'm, like, researching other stuff and everything.
Yeah.
I'm on vacation, like, looking at, like, "Oh, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna do that,"
Yeah.
That's me. And I often feel a level of guilt about a lot of things, but one of the number one things I feel so guilty about is I'm so passionate about so much of the terms of the purpose of the way that I create. And I know and I meet so many people that are in spaces looking for those benchmarks of what that success could be.
Mm,
So we spoke a little bit on the materialism. So it could be like the car, it could be the lady or for the woman, it could be the guy, or
right?
nowadays it could be the guy for the guy, the girl for the girl. It could also be, the academic success, it could be the accolades, it could be whatever that is. Whereas my measurement of success is still always me and so much of like the determining of doing it on my terms. I feel like I'm in a reflection, like I'm watching like as if this is like the Truman Show of like,
Right.
okay, what's going to be presented? How creative can I be? And how cool could this be? Like, hence you say how much time. This is supposed to happen right now because this is such a fruitful, cool conversation, reconnecting with one of the coolest people I know already. And it's happening at the right time too.
Yeah.
Because a lot of what you're speaking about, I feel as though people are not giving that chance to rest. So all of that work you were doing provided almost like 5 months worth of rest at a time where the world was in a space of like what could possibly happen next. And your presence of mind was back to really you.
I was like, I don't give a
Yeah.
I don't care what happens. Like, I'm about to get this beach. This beach about to get Shalece today, you know? Um, I never knew that that was open to me.
And so much of like as we think about like hence I'm speaking about my passion and just walking that path. And it's so tough because the same fears we have about how foolish we will look, usually to others.
Yeah. Usually to people we don't even really give a fuck about.
Yes.
Like not your mama or your
No.
dad, you know what I
No.
mean? Like, we don't even give a shit about Uncle Tom 3 times removed, you
No.
know?
No, and we're so worried about that it'll stop us from pursuing what that real passion is. I'm gonna tell another story, so I'll like this is kind of like what that show will be.
Yeah.
In the arc of the Khary journey, at one point in time, I was a teacher at a last chance school. So
Wow.
last chance school. So first chance school is just regular public school, and you should go there. Second chance school, shout out Northwestern. It had a second chance school. That's night school, and it was weird. So like Northwestern's night school, it would be people that skip regular school all day and be a night school. I'm like, why don't you just go to regular school? And it's like, I don't know, I'd rather come to night school. And it's like, you got to be in class for like double the time. And it's like, well, it was it was some it was some young ladies that made their way to night school that didn't come to day school. So some of that, I think my homies were there because of that.
Yeah.
And in retrospect, not a bad touche. You know what I'm saying? And then last chance school is when you get kicked out of first chance school
And second chance?
and second chance school, you end up at a last chance school.
That's where I graduated from.
And from there, it's like a lot of kids. They usually two types of kids. It's kids that fight all day, and usually like kids that like have a job and just skip a lot of school. So those and sometimes like that can be like an amoeba of both, or if you're like a cousin or related to somebody that does that ends you up at last chance school. But a lot of the kids were like, "You ain't no rapper, Mr. Frazier. You ain't no rapper, Mr. Frazier." I was like, "Yeah, I know a lot of rappers." So
Come battle me.
so so this is years ago. At the time, like Stretch Money's Takes Money to Make Money is like the biggest song in Detroit. So I was like, look, you guys want me to bring Stretch Money to class? And they was like, hell yeah, you don't really know Stretch Money. So I bring Stretch Money and all the kids, because I taught studio, well, that's what they
Mhm.
called it, but music production
Mhm.
more
Mhm.
formally. But the kids was like, you a studio teacher. So The day that Stretch came and Crane Nova came, all the boys didn't even come. The girls did. And they figured out different ways of what and how. And I think some of it is back to now you eliminated what I thought was the block. I thought that I couldn't reach my goal because I couldn't meet a person that really done it.
Yep.
So I can't even be in the room
Mm.
because to be in the room, now I have to come up with another reason why I
Mm.
don't want to pursue my passion.
Wow.
And it was so tough for me to see, hence in the L's you get the lessons. Cause I was thinking like at the time it took me so long to process that because I'm like, damn, I really, you know what I'm saying? You know how hard it is to get a rapper to wake up before, you know what I'm saying? At 11 o'clock to come to this last chance school, you know what I'm saying? Got a Maybach over here, you know what I'm saying? And trust me, you know what I'm saying? This is some tough negotiations. And I was so caught up in that I didn't really reflect that it's like, nah, because this is in their mind, I really want to be a rapper. I really want to be a rapper. I really want to be a rapper. If I just met somebody, I could make it happen.
Yeah.
Mr. Frazier don't know nobody. And then I put them in a room with that somebody. I can't be in a room with that somebody because that's the opportunity that I think I've already outweighed what that means for my life and my
Yeah.
existence. I'd rather just skip school. I'd rather be in a whole nother class room. I'm not connecting on that.
Wow.
So I know that's an example from Last Chance School, but I think that's an example that's very applicable for so many people in life that are not pursuing what they know their passions are because they would feel foolish about it. And then in the journey in the arc of pursuing a passion, I don't think it's like, okay, it's my passion all or nothing. It's steps to learn along the way, and
Mhm.
along the way, as I tell more of these stories, you'll learn that, yeah, I was a Pizza Hut delivery driver. I've, been a truck driver. Like it's other things that you do, but it still doesn't define who you are as long as you're still pouring into your passion.
Yeah.
You can still make those connections, but have the willingness to learn in that arc. But it's so many people I think that are just so afraid to pour into that for so many reasons, and I'm talking about across the board. People that have both parents, people that grow up
Mhm.
in affluent households, people that grow up in the hood, people that grow up middle class, whatever normal means, grow up
Right.
normal, people that, just across the board because it's like, how do you say I'm gonna take the leap of faith and this is really the root of it. Even if I don't reach what I think is the goal of success.
Mhm.
This process is so much more enjoyable than submitting to what everybody else says I should do.
What if we were able to flip what success means on its head, right? And instead of people thinking it was like this goal post, you make a basket, boom,
Mm,
that shot was successful. But success being the journey and all the L's that you take along the way, all the lessons, as you say, call the L's now,
mm.
that you take along the way, that's success. And that why do we think that there's like this shortcut that this person ended up there without having all those L's along the way? Because we don't show it, I guess.
I think definitely. I mean, this device on social media is so crazy because
Yeah.
it's like you look up and you see like some 11-year-old that did a TikTok dance. Like, oh, look at him, an 11-year-old with a TikTok dance, the new billionaire in tech, and they're devoting. And you're like, how in the hell did this happen? How does Sexy Red happen? You know what I'm saying? Like that's what certain people are thinking, but for a Sexy Red to happen, just being in music, that's many people's energies that are already kind of adjacent to that industry that are pouring into that model of that business. So it's tough to say like why would they pour into that? And who knows? You know what I'm
Right.
saying? I can't speak on why that's the selection,
Somebody likes
but
something.
it's many businesses behind like if it's in front of you, know that it's businesses. And Shalece is saying this, yes, because Shalece knows like how I know. If it's in front of you, it's in front of you for a business reason. Even more of the stuff that you're seeing from Detroit is different. I'm putting business analytics into that.
Yeah.
It if you see the hard work, quote unquote, that doesn't look as masterful from a marketing lens of like, I don't even try this. You know what I'm saying? It's just what happens. Another one of those Kari Frazier stories that I have to say. One of the people I know is I don't want to expose him, but one of the music managers for the hip hop station in Atlanta.
Mhm.
And this was maybe 3 years ago, whenever Future dropped so during the pandemic as well. Whenever Future dropped the album that I guess was the breakup Lori Harvey album, and, and he had an interview at one of the Atlanta radio stations, and they rented out a floor of the Atlanta radio station, and when I say they, meaning the production and social media team for Future,
Mm.
and it was a collection of, he said, 15 different people that sat for 7 hours in that office to make a determination on what the next 7 social media posts from Future
Wow.
would be. And these people are from Ivy League schools in psychology, anthropology, it's like sociology, um, business.
Yeah.
Like these aren't, what you think this is. While we're responding to Future saying, like, yeah, I told you he don't really care about Lori Harvey. And you're
Mm.
thinking this, but it is a lot of other people pouring into the arc of this business. So, like, if you saw some of the people that are behind why this is in front of you, you would be shocked and surprised
Mhm.
who they are, how much intentionality they put into this, and how it works. Now, does that natural creativity come from someplace? Definitely. But as it gets going, and when I feel like, mm, for lack of a better term, I usually say the machine, but let me use a term that's not as, I guess, uh, as like defeatist. Let me say, when corporate structures begin to take hold of any commodity, it's going to be a lot of more people like Shalece walking into the room with whole teams figuring out, okay, what are the angles? What are the analytics? How do we make this make sense? Who's the target market? How is this a target market? The sad thing I think about some of this culture is a lot of these target markets really are 11, 12, and 13-year olds, and it scales up to adults.
Yeah. Um, that's unfortunate because, we got our babies on these phones looking at a lot of buffoonery. Um, and there's good stuff to be
Oh,
found,
most definitely. Most
but
definitely.
they have all those people in those rooms with those Ivy League targeting your baby.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Your
And
baby's attention is the most lucrative thing because once they got it, like, think about how long they've got it. It makes a lasting impression
uh,
on those babies.
and let me really get into my bag now that we talking this, like, in the arc of who that is in marketing. So a lot of the marketing world kind of begins really in advertising. Like, I don't know if people seen Mad Men. Like a lot of those like early on advertisers and marketing folks are those people into like that do the cigarettes and things like that. But
Mm,
then you get one of the largest corporations ever, and that's General Motors. General Motors developed the customer profile of like saying like, okay, when you're 16, you're gonna get a muscle car. Then you get a little bit older, you get out of school, you get 20, you don't have a family yet, you'll get an Oldsmobile. Then you finally get a little bit more successful, you'll get in like something like right before Cadillac, then you get
mhm,
to a Cadillac. It's the same type of analytics, especially when we think about AI for where things are. So like if I hook you now, then by the time we're looking at what the trends of what you think you're gonna even be interested in. So you're thinking to yourself like, "Okay, I'm just a kid and I like" I don't know, I don't even know what artist. "I'm a kid and I like Taylor Swift, or K-pop or something like that."
mhm.
From that being incepted, now it's going to carry on in a journey where it's like, okay, we're going to learn what those experiences that you're looking for. Okay, this kid in this arc, we think this is around the time we can start marketing Coachella to them. Okay, so at the Coachella experience, you're gonna walk into Coachella and you're thinking, "Oh, this is a cool music event and all of that stuff," and then it's gonna be nowadays, these kids really aren't into liquor the same, so it's different ways of shifting as marijuana is becoming like it's gonna be like the new tobacco.
Mhm.
So now it's like, "Oh, that's cool." The Jonas brother, and I'm just throwing this out here, is partnered with Snoop Dogg, and they got a marijuana brand. You know what I'm saying? Because they're already marketing the idea of, we know that you'll probably be at Coachella
Mhm.
in this many years, and we'll make sure that we have that booth right out there to start where that arc and that marijuana comes, right? And then the marijuana becomes a gateway into like, okay, now you're in the pharmaceutical industry.
Yeah.
Now you're in the pharmaceutical industry. In about like 3, 4 years, we think, okay, you may have your first kid. So now let's market you Ozempic, right? And now you're marketed Ozempic. And then like this is the way. And I know y'all are like, how is all of this stuff happening? This is happening before our eyes.
Yeah.
And that arc of knowing like where you're at in life, what you're looking for, if you're in student loan debt, all of that stuff starts developing in customer profiles. And you were in sales.
I
So those
was.
customer profiles and the more succinct, and it almost becomes scary of the whole concept of even something like what font, what text, what color, what um who the spokesperson is, and you're watching The Voice, looking at Snoop on it, like, wow, this is cool. Even me included. Like, I never watched The Voice, but I watched half an episode of The Voice because it's like The Voice knows that the arc of who I was and where I was is probably a person that'll sit and watch and look at Snoop on The Voice, where I would never watch The Voice. And 6 years ago, Snoop wouldn't have been on there because that's not the customer that they're looking for. But they're looking at me, my early 40s. They're like, okay, you need to start trusting something because we're going to start accepting messages for probably more than likely the biggest industry in America right now in some form of what healthcare would look like as I'm thinking about it. And I'm not saying it's wrong to think that, but it becomes, who are those trusted voices in that?
So, I wish when I was in sales, I were that smart.
Hilarious.
And that I
Hilarious.
had all of the people behind me telling me who to market to or how they're gonna market to them. For sure, I know that the algorithm can hear my thoughts. At
Yeah.
least that's what I say. I'm like, "I didn't even search for this. I was
Mhm.
just thinking this." Because they know
Yeah.
based on what you just described.
Yeah.
It's predictive behavior. Even ChatGPT is like a large language learning model where it's literally predicting
Mhm.
the next thing that should be written.
Very much so. Very
That's
much so. I
that's
mean,
that's
and now, I mean, with open AI and the way that it takes voices and different things of like reparative voices, I mean, some of the songs, and I'm one that says this is where society is. I'm not necessarily as afraid. And shout out to Tawana Petty and all she's doing for digital justice, especially for Black folks. We need to be aware of that. And in that awareness, some of this that does exist is going to change the way we look at a lot of things. But even before AI, some of those models, like I say, were developed with General Motors.
mhm.
Like General Motors developed, like you say, the customer profile of who this person is and how they're going to respond to something.
Yeah.
And this is all so much of the psychology and sociology, hence why I look at generalization so much, you know. And that's why in our community, and this is what makes our community so different, because our creativity and Black creativity is something that throws a monkey wrench in so much of all of this stuff, because it's just like one day you look up and it's like, how did that even happen? And it's a definition of, I feel like we define cool in certain
We
ways.
do.
And as we define cool, one of the things that is manifesting with a lot of people, I think, in our age is pouring back into community. And some of this people may say, okay, you're seeing through rose colored glasses. But when I talk to a lot of us, like, 40, under 45, when we think about community work and doing this, it's like, nah, we want to do something. And we want it to mean something. And you're working on something that means something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I wanna go back because I wanna close the loop to this one
Okay.
thing,
Yeah, yeah, please do.
and it was I did graduate from a last chance school,
Mm,
and, there's a lot there's a lot sometimes how do I say this? I hope you bleep all that all that silence out. I don't think my stepfather believed in me when I was young.
Mm,
There were probably a lot of people that didn't believe in me because of the trajectory that I was on when I was younger, I think.
yeah.
And sometimes we write people off because they're 13, 16, 18, 20, making dumbass decisions like a 13, 16, 18, and 20-year-old should be because they don't have their brain. The brain is not even working at the capacity that it will, right, work. But, I wish that those last chance schools, second chance schools, that we did pour a little bit more into those kids, even the ones that skip school or
Mhm.
think that they can't do it, and letting them know that, like, failure is part of this process. Like, you right where you're supposed to be, making these mistakes. Now look over here, because at any given moment, you can make another decision. You can make a choice that's going to put you on a different trajectory. I just wanted to close that loop about me having graduated from one of the last chance schools. I think it was Ferndale Adult and Community Education. It was called FACE.
I I wanna definitely kinda, like, I guess, make that a segue because it needs to be spoken about. As people often say, because this is back to, like, a lot of the arc in life and just studying sociology. A lot of the arc in life when people start caring about things are when they start having kids. And when people start having kids, the other thing that naturally starts coming is like, okay, schools. If you sell homes because of redlining and a lot of things, you can't speak to is this like a good neighborhood like explicitly before because we know clearly, I mean, the institution of America, you know what I'm saying? And what says. But technically, what's said is it's a good school over here.
Yeah.
If they say this is a good school over here, I can straight up tell you. That means that a lot of us
Are not there.
ain't there for many a reasons. And I'm not saying necessarily that a good school means no black kids, but it's just like how that school is going to be resourced back to like how institutions look, quote unquote, on paper, what's labeled as a good school. I go a step further because I started my high school journey at King, ended at Northwestern, and also African Center schools. Went to Hallie Magnet Middle School, which is like a school of choice middle school. So I believe I've had an interesting school journey, even truck driving school, Lewis College of Business, Henry Ford Community College, Walsh College. School is so signature to who that person is. Even I think if you have a set of twins. So like the school that's great for twin A could be horrible for twin B and vice versa. So like even in those last chance schools, I believe the lessons and the space and the place inside it, I'm not necessarily saying like connections are made, but that is a space where I do believe that self can be found and identified. S- Maybe more so through some of the lack of opportunity and trauma associated with it.
Yeah. Hmm.
But that's where sometimes I've seen somebody say, "Nah, I'm doing this." Whereas if they were like, kind of like that kid that didn't say nothing and just kind of slid by and were
Yeah.
at a regular school, they wouldn't have made that intentional, purposeful action would not have been taken or move closer to that purposeful action. So I'm definitely one to say that a school's value is so based on who that kid is. And then I know somebody next would say, well, what kid has the value of that? But it's only a reflection of society because the root of all of this
Yeah.
comes back to I was the president of Northwestern's alumni for years. If you gathered adults together in a neighborhood and you left us in a place for 8 hours and we had to be in a room 30 deep all together, you know how many violent acts and
I wasn't expecting that.
crazy things would happen. I mean, could you just imagine just based on where you live,
Oh
if
my god.
adults had to gather for 8 hours in
Yeah.
one building
Yeah.
and the students are only a
Yeah.
reflection of,
Yeah.
our society?
And their brains aren't developed on top of that.
Yeah, so and sometimes I think that some of these schools are getting along a lot better because clearly
Yeah,
people
yeah.
ain't interacting with I mean, could you imagine that? Interacting every day,
Yeah.
8 hours straight,
Mm-mm.
30 in a room?
Yeah.
So I think that's where that space for community kinda comes because it's I don't like the term supplemental, but that's where more of those connections can be drawn for everyone. That's where you can get that intergenerational connection. That's where you can meet some of the people that you wouldn't necessarily meet on that path to school.
Yeah.
It'll be working in community. It's going to be in those efforts. And like I say, I may be seeing this more optimistically than most, but I do think that there's a rallying cry of people 40 to 50 that are saying to themselves, okay, how can I pour into community and make this cool and make that connection? Because I'm not going to do it like some of the OGs did it to me and say everything's wrong that I'm doing. Some of us are doing that. Some of us are, not everybody, but some of us are coming a little bit like, all right, let me figure out how to really, build
Connect
and
with
make some
them.
connections.
Connect with them,
Hmm.
with the individual.
Yep.
Kari, I hate our school system. I think it needs to be blown up.
Mm,
I do. I hate our school system.
mm,
Like from beginning to end, I
mm,
hate that shit. It's so individual, like you said, education, and it causes those little guys that skipped your class.
mm,
It causes them not to feel good enough
mm,
because it's one standard.
mm,
If you ask a fish to climb a fucking tree, he'd fail.
mm.
If you asked, though, the fish to swim, he'd pass all day long. So I think a lot of our schools are asking the fucking fish to climb trees. That's all that they're doing so that they can what? We're still based on the agriculture calendar.
I,
We're
I
still, you know
I
what I
would
mean?
say everything about our schooling model is really built on the opposite. It was to take the agricultural it's the agriculture calendar, but it was to take the agricultural worker and make them an industrial worker.
Ah, yes, yes,
That's
yes.
why we have
Yes, the
bells.
industry,
That's
yes.
why it
The
looks
train,
like a
the
factory.
factory. You're right.
The whole
You are
concept was
absolutely right.
basically taking the agrarian work, the person that knew tending to the land, knew, so much more about nature and how things could function, which when I say the person, our
Our
people. So
people.
it was like specifically like, the history of America is black folks that know this. So now you have, the titans of industry, the Carnegies, the Van Burens, JP Morgan Chase, and people were like, people couldn't read. So, they were like dying on the line like every day. So it's like, okay. And clearly, labor needed to come, but you still needed to
Absolutely.
have an arc of like, how do we get productivity out of these people? Hence, you get the endowments to create the public school system. But up before like the 1900s, school was looked at for something of the very affluent and very rich. And of those very affluent and very rich, those that were more learned and more interested in reading. Hence, even when they compare, like, the kids in Japan are at this level, but in Japan, it's like after second grade, if it looks like you ain't checking for school, you ain't
Right,
in
we
school. You know what I'm saying? So it's like it's a different type of arc of what education is, and then it's sold like a lot of stuff because the marketing of this really through
Yeah,
politics as if it's a public good. But I don't necessarily think it was ever really a public good as much as we need to take this workforce
we
that
need some workers.
is on the farm and get them in the factory. And when they get in the factory, they don't need to be cutting people's heads off
Right.
because they don't know how to read, how to, you know what I'm saying, put these axles on the line.
You got it. So we can make some money.
Yeah.
So what do we do? I mean, I guess that's the question. The overarching question is how do we change it and who's up for the task of changing it? I hate it. I do.
Mhm.
And yet I don't have a solution. So I don't complain and I don't speak out about it because I don't have the solution. And if I'm going to speak out about something, I'm gonna have a fucking solution.
I would believe that the value in school is there like a lot of things. It's opportunity inside of it. And then obviously the socialization. The tough thing is it's the yin and the yang. Some of the opportunities inside it for who you could be very destructive, and some of the socialization inside of it could also be very destructive for those moments too. How I would say as we look at this graduating class of 2004 is the graduating class of COVID-19. And so much of what that pandemic meant transitioned so much for so many people because clearly it was a hands-on experience for many parents to really just learn the arc of what that scholastic system is right now, and it's more like the structure that does exist and really where things stand. And also just knowing that, like, I mean, what's the standard of what this graduating class will have, quote unquote, these standards that we set, and what do we marry ourselves to? Because clearly, one of the programs that we're going to do this year is we're going to do a George Floyd moment. You met some of the contractors that work with me, young men that
Mhm.
were freshmen when that happened, and we're going to
Wow.
talk about that. So, like, we're gonna do a program for Martin Luther King Day, probably partner with U of M Detroit, I believe, where it'll be like an intergenerational discussion. I was
Mm.
actually gonna ask one of the people you know to possibly
Yeah.
be on that. I think he
Yeah.
liked that.
Yeah.
But but an intergenerational discussion from their lens on video and
Mhm.
our lens on what they're responding to, because that's the type of moment that now life was already stopped. Life stopped even more right then. And it's a snapshot in time that will forever exist. And it's the closest thing for, I think, if you're 18 or 19 now, to have something like Emmett Till before
Yep.
them.
Yep.
Whereas we kind of, in our own arc of our own life, we're not even seeing that. But to be freshmen in high school ain't what high school is, life is already stopped. And now life is stopped around this.
I probably won't be in that conversation, right? As
Mhm,
a young man, I won't be in that conversation, and I wonder, but I don't even know if I've ever had my son is 19.
mhm,
I don't even know if I've ever had that conversation with him. I know we've talked about it, like, lightweight talked about it, but
mhm,
I haven't had a conversation that would be that impactful.
mhm.
And I don't know if it was less of a discussion and more of like, "Look, like,
Yeah,
this is what can happen." Um, for me, at that time, as I've told many people, I was pissed
yeah,
at the people, not at the incident, because that's Trayvon Martin,
mhm.
that's, Sandra Bland, that is, what's the gentleman's name
Gary
in
Brown, it's
it's all
um,
it was all those people, and then for y'all to be upset over this, I'm like, "What the fuck? Why
mhm,
is everybody so upset? You don't know that this shit been happening?
yeah,
Like, why are we stopping shit now?" Like, I could not. It took me like, all my white friends were calling me.
yeah. That
Like,
that right there, and we're gonna have a discussion with women for Women's History Month too. So we're gonna definitely pick that up with the same style, the intergenerational discussion, um, because it is a moment that transition, and I got a lot of calls from
your
white
white friends.
friends too
Yeah,
of like, you know
yeah.
what I'm saying? I apologize. And it's like, for what? You know what I'm saying? It's just
It's
interesting.
like,
You know what I'm saying?
for the last 400 years? 'Cause why we talking about this?
Yeah, I
Like,
know. It's
this
like,
shit been happening. Like,
yeah, I know.
why are
Yeah.
we all mad over this? Now, not that we should not have been, but I think I was even more incensed, like, upset because, like, dude,
This is the
this is what
reality.
happens.
And that's where I think the community really comes into play. And that's where I believe that the resilience of knowing that our creativity can pour into our community through our culture and strengthen things. What's the project you're working on?
So, couple projects, well, I so the one that I'm most passionate about right now is I sit on the board of a new. This is a new board thing. I sit on 2 boards, so I don't wanna leave one out,
Mhm,
for the community. I sit on the board just newly called Renewed Homes, and what we're doing is we are buying homes and rehabbing them for people who would not normally be credit worthy,
mhm,
giving them classes in credit utilization, finance, like how to have pride in home ownership, and then selling them a house at under market value. And you'll get an opportunity to talk to the founder of that nonprofit. That's very important to me. And I wish that my business wasn't just like renting to
mhm.
people and that I had this is the closest thing that I mean, I just love the mission and the things that we're doing to, pour back into the community in that way.
And I would say, like I say, that's where some of those assets like really connect. When you said this, it immediately made me think of like some of the work back to like culture and stuff, but that
Yeah,
Warwick Dunn's been doing down throughout Atlanta and other communities in the South. The running back they play for the Falcons and the Buccaneers and everything. And what he's done just on that same premise of like his mother needed a home. So he's like, okay, I want to make sure that a home does exist for certain families.
yeah,
And right now, as you know, a lot of discussions from the past presidential election with so many people, but here nor there, you're in the industry more than I am. I just observe from the outside, but home ownership, I believe, is becoming more and more of what in a city like Detroit, we grew up as that being a very attainable goal to becoming more and more difficult for people to reach. And that's for people that don't even consider themselves impoverished or anything because just what's happened to the industry during that pandemic also, you know, and you can speak more to this because this is your field. What happened is as people didn't go into offices, a lot of the commercial real estate industry entered into the residential industry.
yeah.
And as the people that were into commercial real estate have entered the residential real estate market, they clearly have transitioned a lot of homes that would have been on the market for families to their it's corporate, you know,
Yeah.
it's corporations and you know, some of the things that I've seen where homes are being partitioned off like boarding houses and like people are sharing bathrooms and rooms and extended rental Airbnbs and things like that. But like owning a home, especially when we think of like cities like Detroit, it's just not, I'm not saying it's impossible,
Mhm.
but it's becoming a lot more improbable for many people that are, we use the term that politicians use, working class people.
I love it. Yeah, so, for many reasons, people are not able to buy homes.
Mhm.
A lot of it stems from being not credit worthy, or they
Yeah.
say that they're not credit worthy. Some people don't even desire to own a home because they don't realize some of the or let me say what I've heard. If I own the house, that means I have to get things fixed when it happens.
Yeah.
Not realizing that one, budgeting can help you be prepared for when things happen because things will happen.
Mhm.
Maintaining the house, understanding what actually needs to be maintained in a house
Mhm.
can help you with that. Another piece is the when you have a home, you have a bank. When you're paying your mortgage note, you're earning equity in your house that a bank will allow you to pull out. And back in the day, it meant something. Like today, I don't know how often we do that, but a long time ago, we could pull that money out for our kids to go to college when it meant something for you to go to college to get a job.
Mhm.
You could pull that money out and invest in your son or your daughter's or your granddaughter's plumbing or electrician business. who make tons of money, by the way.
Mhm.
Like, if you
Yeah.
wanna be anything, because I write 1099s for them. I
Yeah.
write check. If you plumbing and electrician and HVAC, so heating and cooling
Mhm.
specialist, they make a lot of money. They are the millionaires, I can guarantee you.
Mhm.
Um, but you can pull that money out of your home and invest in your child or grandchild's business. And those are the things that not owning a home, you can't you can't or where you I mean, working check getting your check, if you can pack away enough money, right, when many of us are living just to survive, then yeah, but if you can find a home, which we want to at Renewed, we'd like to sell homes that don't cost you your mortgage note is not more than what you were paying for rent, and in many cases, less.
And see, this also coupled with the knowledge behind it, because so many things when we think of the housing market on the public comment show that we do where we talk local politics every week, so much is about what affordable housing is, and that's renting and home ownership.
Mhm.
Because there are some things and lessons that need to be learned in home ownership, like anything. Um, one of the number one things I think for a lot of these homes here are, you know, the housing stock in Detroit. It's no telling when that transition will happen and what you're going to look at in a tax bill and preparing for what that would be, because you're going on with that sweet old grandma that owned that home for 40 years was paying in taxes, and then you look at your tax bill and you're like,
Yep.
"What the?" You
Yeah.
know? So,
Yeah.
so it's what's happening in knowing taxing. Um, it's also being aware of what type of asset a home is for your portfolio and what can build. Yeah, you are responsible for the repairs, but the reality of what's happening in renting is, uh, especially in a city like Detroit, it doesn't seem like it, but you're in the industry. People
Yeah.
are moving to Detroit. So back in the day, that rental, you were looking to be like, "Oh, I wanna be month to month." I mean, now to find that lease, it's places that are exponentially going up.
Mm.
That same place you were renting, you know, 3 years ago for $1,200 is probably 116.50 now.
Yep.
And it looks like in 2 more years from there, they're gonna want 19.50.
You know it.
And then 3 years from there, they're gonna want $2,300, which
Yep.
is probably closer to what they would say is non-affordable deductions that could be taken with, like, some tax program from HUD or something like that. So, the idea of saying, like, "Oh, Imma be responsible," what's happening is, especially in Detroit, I want you all to pay attention to this. If you're renting, you should probably be prepared to possibly, in the next 5 to 6 years, pay anywhere from good 1/3, kinda like my model,
Mhm.
to possibly 60% more for what your rent would be, and that would be considered fair.
But also, I can tell you to get out.
And if you do what I'm saying through home ownership, when you lock in on that mortgage,
That's it.
you're locked in.
Unless some eminent domains type stuff happens, right?
Mhm,
But it's yours and
mhm,
nobody can put you out.
mhm,
I know that home ownership is not the greatest investment. It's not the greatest way to invest your money. It's not. There are far better investments. In fact, like Rich Dad Poor Dad, if you own a home and you're not making money off of it, it's considered a liability
mhm.
because it's not making you money. Yes, sure. That's an advanced concept. Let's first get to home ownership.
Yeah.
Then we'll talk about other ways to invest your money or to make money off of that. But first, let's just put some money in the bank. Your home.
And I'm just looking at it, like I say, I'm looking at all the trends of what's happening in real estate. And real estate rent is going to cost a lot more money. I don't know if
It
people
is.
are aware of how hot this market is,
Yeah.
as so many corporate and not corporate, as so many commercial real estate people have gotten into the residential game in Detroit.
You know, Khary, I wasn't even looking at the commercial getting into residential. I'm just looking at people moving to Detroit like, "What? It costs how much?" And
Mhm.
they're coming from Brooklyn,
Yeah.
or they're coming from California,
Ye
from you know what I
yeah.
mean? And they're like, "What? Psh, yeah."
Mhm.
Or they're outbidding you, or they're like, "What? You have somebody willing to pay 1,200, I'll give you 15."
Yeah.
Because that's what they're used to. They're not used to these under market
Yeah.
prices.
Yeah.
And so now they're pricing you out, and the landlord is thinking, "Oh, I can charge that much?
Yeah.
Let me give them a 30-day notice. You
I
gotta
mean,
go. Let
people
me paint
yeah.
this house and and do something. You gotta go."
I mean, them, the 2, 3-year leases, I don't know the person getting that now.
No,
They're getting,
no.
at best, year to year, and it's
Yeah,
going up
yeah,
every go.
yes.
And that's just where the market is trending. And, then you look at, like, the people that are leaving the Los Angeleses, the San Franciscos, the places where, you probably get a room this size and you paying $4,500 a
Yeah,
month, you know, and they're looking at like, damn, you can get a whole two-family flat in Detroit for what I was paying for a room.
and I'll have
I
somebody
want it.
else pay the whole mortgage because 'cause Imma get somebody to live, next door or upstairs?
I want it. I want it.
Easy.
Yeah, and you talk about the plumbers and that's also what's galvanizing in that industry.
Yes,
Like, hence learning that trade is very valuable because, the plumbers, the HVAC, the the person that can do floors and just any form of like what home repair could be, it's people that have bought up, 4 or 5 houses. I'm even looking on my block and I'm in the hood for
yep.
people that have been over here. We in the hood. But even in the hood, the work that's being done on homes that I thought
Yep.
were like really on rows of like, damn, they sold that crib. Like people are like, you think about this crib? Yeah, people have thought about it, people have moved in and people are repairing them.
Yep.
And now they're turning around the homes on my block as well.
The, just so you know, like, the biggest checks that I write, electrician, plumber, and HVAC tech, the
Yeah,
one that comes and takes care of your furnace and your water heater.
yeah,
3, and I'll give you an example of how much these 1099s are. I'm one client and as the company, and the client may service me or service my homes once, maybe twice a week. So they get 1, maybe 2 jobs, and on a big week, maybe 4 jobs for me, from 1 to 4 jobs per week. How much I wanna you get how much do you think I'm just one client.
yeah.
They're spending an hour, maybe 2 hours with me per job, 8 hours a week, maybe. Let's just say that
I would say
at the end of the year.
at the end of the year, so like technically I'm looking like 350 to 500 an hour. So let's just say like that's 400, right? So of that 4 times 8, what's that? 3,200. So that 3,200, um 3,200, you said like a week. So that 3,200 a week times 4. Y'all seeing really how my mind moves with money right now. So that's like what's that? 12. That's 12 8. So that's like 13,000. 13,000 times 12. So like we looking, somewhere in between like about 150 and maybe like 185.
So, we don't I would say per vendor,
Mm,
probably a little less than that,
mhm.
but a little less than that, somewhere between 80, like 88, 90,000 and 140
I was
a
I
year.
was
Yeah, you
I
were
was in
close.
that, but I'm just moving my mind
Between
around.
I'm telling you
Yeah,
what I know I'm
yeah,
like, I'm in the wrong business, and we have,
yeah,
like, plumbers,
mhm,
HVAC, and electricians, those are the ones that are making that
yeah,
for one client.
and I said from 350 to I went from
Yes.
350 to 5 and I just settled on that, or like 3 to 5 and I settled on the 4. I mean, these skills that are ever prevalent, especially in the housing stock of Detroit, because so many of these homes, I mean, everybody got that lead letter that people was like, "What the hell?" So, like the housing stock, a lot of these homes were built in the 40s and the 50s. So having to keep the bones and the structure are amazing, but the guts, keeping that going,
Yeah,
you know what I'm
all
saying? You
day.
you get a pipe to burst, oh
I
my god,
mean,
I've done that before.
the if the person cannot figure out how to work the thermostat or a kid broke it or something happened, we gotta call the guy,
Yeah.
HVAC guy, you know?
Mhm.
That's another and it's only about 200,
But
uh,
even that 200, I mean, we look at, like, what that is.
10 minutes.
Mhm. It
I'm saying for that,
possibly
that's like
1 minute.
10 minutes for him to
Possibly
go
1
and be
minute.
like, "Oh, thermostat, okay."
Yeah. But, I mean, a plumber come out, fix a problem, it may cost you
I don't even
$4,000.
like to say plumber.
Yeah. So, like, and it I know this may be like, "Okay, you're gonna have that," but hence, that's where the credit classes come. That's where learning how things function, and hence, that's also where community comes, because as much as Shalece is sharing this, Shalece is in business, and people function in business
They
differently.
do.
Some of those same contractors, not all of them, but some of those same contractors are understanding of what is present in community. And then I know, just with Hope Village Revitalization, do some community hours and do some things just at cost of whatever the materials
They're
are,
not gonna
and
charge Miss
provide.
Jones the same
Yeah.
amount, you know? But I say that to say this, in terms of going to school, if you're gonna go to trade school, they have me as one client. Let's say they make 100 from me. They probably have 12 clients. They probably have way more than 12 clients. 12 times 100,000.
Yeah, I mean, it's very attainable, and it's one of those things that, back to, like, where do you see that those skill sets, and hence in that journey, and what that connects with, and it's definitely a lot of opportunities, I think, that are in so many things of redevelopment. Because, like I say, look at the housing stock, and it's going to be so many opportunities,
Yeah.
and I would love to see more people connect in what that equitably looks like in community. I mean, so much that has been poured in, and then when you find somebody that does, that's the other thing. It's relationships. You do some good work, you're gonna stay
Yeah.
active, and you're gonna stay working, and some of
I'm
the people.
referring all day. I'm
Some of the people I've
referring.
worked with, it's like I looked up, you know what I'm saying? They'll be gone for like 3 months because they'll be in Flat Rock and Toledo doing projects where it's like, "Ah, man. I wanted to get these floors done."
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Yep.
So this is good. The other nonprofit that I sit on the board for is Black Leaders Detroit for the funding board. And so if
Mm.
you have a business and you need some money and you know Black Leaders Detroit well,
Yeah.
like apply. We give money to people who would not normally believe that they are eligible. Now, yeah, your business has to be in existence, and there are a lot of other like NEI Detroit, a lot of other programs that you can get into if you have a business and you want to have help coaching and so on. Get in with those different programs. But if you need some money, stop bootstrapping everything because funding is important. They have no interest loans. Now we're done for this year giving out money because
Mm.
we did a really good job.
It's the end of the year as well.
Yeah. But next year for sure. I love that, man. That's like the best when I first got on the funding board
Mm.
and we started talking to there's this one lady that stands out in my mind and she has a building or she leases a building to do hair out of and to do
Mm.
a full spa in the Grand Mount Rosedale area.
Mm.
And she was like she was going through her thing. She's like, "You wanna see pictures?" Beautiful things she had done or hired people when she gets paid, she'd hire a handyman to do this or that. Beautiful building, and she was like, "Well, I mean, honestly, I'm asking for this money, but whether or not y'all give it to me, I don't know. Imma get it done." I was like, that's the type of person
That's
that
the
and
attitude.
that's who we
Mhm.
that's obviously it was like, "Yes, please,
Mhm.
hard yes."
Yeah, I've partnered with Black Leaders Detroit for the Collard Green Cook-Off Juneteenth event, but also I'm a recipient. It's like I'm the president as well. We've received a grant
Nice.
from Black Leaders Detroit as well.
Nice.
So and just, Dewan, and also I give to Black Leaders to Trade too. So
Yep.
I'm one of the people that give to the fund. I give my what is it, my $200 a year as well. So it's like it's all around an ecosystem, like
It
as you
is.
pour in. And then when I stop by Good Cakes and Bakes, sometimes I was like,
That's
well,
right.
at the dollar, it's like, let me get some bring back the vegan cinnamon
Yes.
rolls. But yeah, so it's like I'm putting some money into Black Leaders Detroit sometimes there as well. So it's very it's very powerful what I've seen develop in Black Leaders Detroit over time, and that presence to give so many businesses that opportunity that I feel like they would not get because, as we say, that
Nope.
financial institution, some of it's definitely the learning curve. Some of it also is the institutional bias that already existed from that industry, but we're seeing our people interact and engage with it. And now I didn't even know that you was in that position there, but
Yeah.
that's even doper. Like, that's powerful.
My mother was a hairdresser,
Yeah, and there
and
you
I'm
go.
sure if she had had just a little more time before she had to go back to work after having my little sister, it would have done our family a world of good,
Mm,
right? So she could have possibly been eligible for a loan or something like that. It really hit home
mhm.
when we other people, but the hairdresser
Yeah, you connect.
really hit home. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we're getting ready to do a bike ride. We do an annual bike ride, but this time we're going from Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma to Wall Street
Mhm,
in New York, and it's called Ride for Equity. And we're looking for 500,000 people to give that $52 a week.
mhm,
And again, like Kari said, if you're going to give back into that ecosystem, like 52, not a week, I'm sorry, $52 a year,
mhm. Yeah, so it's just
like
a
a
dollar a
dollar a
week.
week.
Yeah,
$1 a week. Many people, if you can afford $1 a week, man, I'm just asking that you do that
yeah.
because we're taking care of each other.
And some of it is the impact of being present. Because I know somebody may say, "Oh, that 50 don't matter." No, the 50 matters because it shows the representation across the board, as as Black Leaders of Trade definitely ain't gonna turn down like, if Goldman Sachs gave $1 billion, but it says more to Goldman Sachs when they see that, oh man, y'all got
500,000 donors.
exactly
You know what I mean?
of the community that gave at this level. Hence, so like that's very powerful because it speaks volumes because it's like the community's invested in this instead
That's
of
right.
just being such a vision where it's like, just the vision of whoever that big giant donor is. I mean, it could be LeBron James, you know what I'm saying? But
Yep.
now it's like, wow, it's just as much leverage because the community's pouring into this and they're going to hold us more accountable than the whims of whoever the large investment is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love it, man. They do good work, and I'm just so happy to be able to be part of it, a very, very small part
Oh
of
yeah.
that.
It's definitely big. This was fun. I'm gonna ask the
Was.
classic Detroiters different questions now.
Uh-oh.
This was I love this one. This was longer than expected, but I like it. This was fun. Um, very first car, year, make, and model, year you got it.
Um, it was a 1974 two-door Chevy Caprice.
You had a Chevy Caprice?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Two-door. Those are not common.
Mm.
And I had it in, like, 2000. Nope, I had it in, it was before Ty. 1999, I
Oh
believe,
man.
74 and 99.
Oh
And the
man.
2 wheels were bigger the 2 wheels were, like, bigger in the back than they were in the front. I didn't even see that shit.
Mm.
I was like, "Yes, I can afford it. I want that one."
Okay. The big question is like, man, pushing a ride like that, was it clean? Okay.
It
Because it's
didn't
like
have
if
any dents until I had an accident in it.
oh, okay. Because I was gonna say, boy, somebody in that type of Caprice, they put some rims on it and be playing Cash Money every day.
Yeah, nah, I wasn't. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So where's the first place you went when you got it?
Ooh, I don't remember.
Mm-hmm.
Home,
Okay.
probably.
All right. You're
At
the DJ.
school.
You're the DJ at the end of the fireworks at Woodward and Jefferson. You get to play 2 songs. What songs you playing?
Oh, man. I should have been prepared for this. Did I not look at, the DJ? Ah, um, at the end of the fireworks,
Mhm.
like, this is not okay because I'm going to say, like, India Arie, some some, is it, Chocolate Love? What is it?
Oh, brown skin?
Not Brown Skin, although
Mhm.
that's a great one. It's the
Okay.
one about Chocolate Kiss, that's it.
Okay. Alright.
And the second one, um, dang, I am such a neo soul
Mhm.
type girl, so we're going to do, Love by Musiq Soulchild.
Okay. I'm with it. I'm with it. Alright, you gonna have people, like, in a romantic space.
That's it.
I'm with it. Alright, and you could rename Woodward after one Detroiter. Who would it be and why?
Oh, what we're after a Detroit. The first person that came to mind was Coleman Young.
That's who he is the one that usually said that. Why?
Really?
Mhm.
Um, Shit, cause he was a black leader. He didn't take no shit. He cussed a lot.
Mhm.
You know I like to cuss.
Mhm.
He cussed a lot. He ain't take no shit, and he made a lot of shit happen for the city of Detroit, for our people, and it was just good to see that representation.
I love it. I love it. It's a Detroit is different. Y'all met my homie Shalece. Y'all see so much more. I was talking like ever too. Like we was both on the couch.
Yes.
I love it. And y'all already see like a special program that y'all gonna find a whole lot more about homes and empowerment for communities and people looking to get inside them. And as I'm telling you all this, people think I'm a nerd about a lot of stuff, but just looking at the trends of if you renting right now, it's about to be a lot more money for you. And that's definitely in Detroit, but even other places.
Yeah.
So with that being said, a program like that to empower people towards home ownership could be very impactful and very beneficial. With that being said, Detroit is different.
Detroit is Different is where you get information, artistry, history, music, and even comedy. Detroit is Different, a home for the culture of Detroit. Visit online at DetroitisDifferent.com today.